Another complication of depression is the fact that sometimes the slightest thing can trigger or cause a bout of depression. And it varies from person to person. Some people have no triggers at all. For some people, depression just happens. That happens sometimes to me too. I will have frequent moments where depression just occurs without any specific trigger. There are some very distinct situations where depression can be triggered for me, most of which happen when I'm really tired. When I'm really tired, I am very emotionally and mentally vulnerable, and I have a more difficult time talking myself through depressive thoughts due to that exhaustion. So if something happens in that type of situation to trigger the depression, it usually is worse, and I end up having to sleep it off. But very common things that trigger depression for me are social situations where somebody silences me in some way or invalidates something that I have to say, or when somebody talks down to me, or when somebody yells at me. Whenever I have any of those things happen, I freeze up, the depression starts, and it eventually leads to me shutting down, and it almost always is only resolved through sleeping. I can't resolve it in any other way. If there is a specific situation where a teacher kind of looks at me weird, like in a classroom, based on my feedback, maybe my feedback wasn't clear or articulate enough, and they kind of give me that, like, oh, you're stupid, how could you make that kind of comment look? That really triggers my depression. Or if it comes from another student in the classroom, that is another example of that type of situation. Sometimes a person can say something very slight that causes a depressive bout, and usually I don't say anything. Usually I just have to internalize it and get through it, because most people will assume that the trigger was like nothing and kind of stupid, and they may find my reaction to be stupid. And that's a very popular thing that people do to others who have depression. People will immediately say, oh, well, how could that cause it? Like, you just need to man up and deal with it. But really, that's not the case. You need to support us and encourage us, because sometimes if we're in a particular mental state, we can't simply just ignore something that's said. It goes through our head. Sometimes we may lay awake at night thinking about, oh, maybe the other night in class I should have articulated myself more effectively. That way my teacher didn't give me a condescending look and embarrass me in front of everyone else. Sometimes if I accidentally make a mistake, or if I accidentally do something in a different way that people aren't used to, that can trigger depression based on those individuals' responses. And I know immediately people are going to say, well, don't base your reactions on what other people think of you. When you're in that headspace where you are vulnerable and you are having a difficult time talking yourself through that depression, it's very demanding to be able to just fob everything off and ignore it like it doesn't exist. Sometimes the best way that I describe depression is it's a loud voice rattling in the back of your mind that overpowers every other voice. And really the only way you can let it resolve itself is by letting that voice holler and then going to sleep and just waking up to a new day. Those are my thoughts on triggers and causes. Really, it's a very delicate matter based on the individual, because everybody has different types of triggers. Everybody reacts to them differently. But people need to realize that regardless how we react, please be there to encourage us, or at least be patient with us, because more often than not, we are immediately invalidated by people for not being able to react to things in a way that everyone else can. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode of Disempowering Depression, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Thanks.